Hi, I'm Tom with a list of interesting things. This time of year is insane for everyone on the team, so it's mostly been shorts lately, but I wanted to do a quick video for my New York State friends on the 2021 New York State ballot propositions. I hope you subscribe to stay up to date on all the most interesting things, but time is short this time of year, so let's dive right in. Occasionally on the ballot, states, counties, towns, or the United States as a whole will present a ballot proposition. This is a question that has been deemed too contentious or too important to be decided by representatives, so instead is posed directly to voters. These aren't terribly rare, but they're always important, and in particular, I wanted to go over the ballot propositions on the ballot tomorrow, November 2nd, during the New York State municipal and county elections. This is so that my normal friends know what they're walking into when they go in to vote, and so that my politically engaged friends have something to argue about. There are 5 of them in total on the ballot, and we're going to go through them in reverse order, because I think that the most interesting one is number 1, and we're going to save that for last. Here we go. Ballot proposition number 5. The proposed amendment would increase the New York City Civil Court's jurisdiction by allowing it to hear and decide claims for up to $50,000 instead of the current jurisdictional limit of $25,000. Shall the amendment be opposed? I don't find this one terribly interesting. It is only relevant if you live in the city of New York, and so I do find this interesting that this is a statewide resolution. I wonder if that has something to do with it crossing county lines or something like that, but regardless, that's pretty much the sum total. It increases the jurisdiction of the New York City Civil Court, allowing larger cases to be decided in civil court. And that's it. Moving right on up to number 4. And now number 4 and number 3 are very closely related. Here we go. Quote, the proposed amendment would delete from the current provision on absentee ballots the requirement that an absentee must be unable to appear at the polls by reason of absence from the county or illness or physical disability. Shall the proposed amendment be opposed? This puts in place, it solidifies no excuse absentee voting. It allows an individual to vote absentee regardless of whether they are able to get a doctor's note or present some other quote-unquote legitimate reason that they can't be at the polls. This opens it up to everyone. As I say, 3 and 4 are very closely related. In my opinion, and broadly speaking, as we here at the list of interesting things think that it's wonderful when people vote, anything that makes it easier to vote is, broadly speaking, a very positive thing. So this one and number 3, I'm just going to be flipping raving about. Let's move on to number 3 as well. Eliminating 10-day advance voter registration requirement, the proposed amendment would delete the current requirement in Article 2, Section 5, that a citizen be required to vote at least 10 days before an election, and would allow the legislature to enact laws permitting a citizen to register to vote less than 10 days before the election. Shall the proposed amendment be approved? Again, as long as you like people voting, this one's wonderful. This means that if you were supposed to, if you had wanted to re-register at a new address now hold on here. I'm not cutting this because this is interesting. I'm not confident whether this applies to exclusively new registration or registration changes as well. I may have been incorrect. I think it's probably the case that this is not re-registration, but is registration only, initial registration only. If I'm incorrect about that, I'll try to find out, and I might put it in the comments if I find more information about it. But I believe it's just initial registration. So, suppose you have your kid, or you are a 19-year-old who meant to register to vote in September, but you forgot. It is now, today, on November 1st, too late. You can't register to vote right now and vote in the election tomorrow. This would cut away that requirement. I think this is a wonderful thing. I think it's phenomenal. The more people voting, the better. Moving right along, number 2 I find very interesting for a couple of reasons. The right to clean air, clean water, and a healthful environment. This, I believe, is a constitutional amendment. Yes, this is a New York State constitutional amendment. So, quote, the proposed amendment to Article 1 of the New York Constitution would establish the right of each person to clean air and water and a healthful environment. Shall the proposed amendment be approved? Shall we take a moment to dive into this? No. Because the phrasing is pretty clear, at least in terms of what it's broadly supposed to be doing. It is meant to be a climate change prevention measure, right? But it can also be, like, very interestingly applied in some interesting niche circumstances. If anyone is from the Western New York region, they probably remember the Love Canal disaster. This solidifies in New York State constitutional law that that disasters like that are infringing on the constitutionally protected rights of New York State citizens. I imagine that this could also be applied to coal-fired power plants and gas-fired vehicles. I find this an extremely interesting amendment. In particular, I find the phrasing of it very, very, very interesting. Proposing an amendment to Article 1 of the Constitution in relation to the right to clean air and water and a healthful environment. Environmental rights, each person shall... Yeah, this is very interesting. This is very interesting because of the incredible, far-reaching implications of it. Because remember, this is a constitutional amendment. Let's take a look at the New York State Constitution. Take me to the Constitution amendments. This video was supposed to be shorter than this. No, I really just want the New York State Constitution, please, with all the amendments. Oh, I guess we're going to look at the whole thing. Come on, let's dive in. Stick around. We still have the most interesting one. Not that this isn't interesting. So, this is... Yeah. Okay, so right here. It's amended to Article 1. It'll add a Section 19 to Article 1. So, right here. So, the New York State Legislature is proposing this ballot measure and proposing this as an amendment to the Constitution, enshrining it with as much gravitas as the right to a trial by jury and freedom of worship. That is incredible and would have extremely far-reaching implications in the next several years as coal-fired power plants and fossil fuel-driven vehicles are more severely punished for the damage they are causing to the environment of the citizens of New York State. It would also, I think, let's see, what is the phrasing? Yes, clean air and water. We establish the right of each person to clean air and water. I find that very interesting because one could make the argument that this implies a citizen has a right to free water, which would be very interesting. Which is an interesting point to make. Okay, that one's really exciting. Really, 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 really exciting. There are far-reaching implications, and I've only been thinking about this for a couple of days. I have no idea what the full implications of this will be. I am excited to see where it goes if it passes. All right, moving right along. Finally, number 1. The most exciting, and you can see this big beefy friend here. Okay, we're going to go through the whole abstract here. We're going to go through all of this. Ballot proposal number 1. Amending the apportionment and redistricting process. As many of you know, redistricting is happening late this year and early next year. This is a change to the redistricting process. The proposed constitutional amendment would freeze the number of state senators at 63, amend the process for the counting of the state's population, delete certain provisions that violate the United States Constitution, repeal and amend certain requirements for the appointment of the co-executive directors of the Redistricting Commission, and amend the manner of drawing district lines for congressional and state legislative offices. Shall the proposed amendment be approved? Here's the abstract. We are going through this whole thing because I think I have a good understanding of it, but it is not a bad thing to go through again. This is a very complicated one. Do not vote on this one without reading this. This is really complicated and really important because it changes the way elections work in New York State. It's really important that you understand it before you vote on it. The purpose of this proposal is to amend the portions of Article 3 of the New York Constitution that relate to the way district lines for congressional and state legislative offices are determined. The proposal would do the following. Amend and repeal portions of the state constitutional amendment adopted by voters in 2014 that created a redistricting commission. Allow the redistricting commission to appoint 2 co-executive directors by simple majority vote, without consideration as to the party affiliation of the individual being appointed. That's important. Furthermore, this amendment would eliminate the alternative process currently in place that allows for the appointment of co-executive directors and co-deputy executive directors by the legislature, should the Redistricting Commission fail to appoint co-executive directors, and remove the requirement that the 2 co-executive directors of the Redistricting Commission be members of different political parties. That's also important. It removes the requirement that the co-executive directors of the Redistricting Commission be from different parties. This allows them to be from the same party, meaning that the leaders of the Redistricting Commission are the preventative measure stopping one party from having control of the co-executive directors of that commission would no longer be in place. Furthermore, freeze the number of state senators at the current number of 63. Currently, under the state constitution, the number of senators was originally set at 50 and thereafter increased over time to 63. So this solidifies the number 63 as the permanent cap number of state senators in the state. Require that state assembly and senate district lines be based on the total population of the state, and require the state to count all residents, including non-citizens and Native Americans, if the federal census fails to include them. So, this allows for locations in the state with a lot of... This applies to Native Americans, but it has a much more weighty implication over the state broadly for undocumented immigrants, of which there are very many in New York State, in New York City particularly. This would allow the state legislature to amend their counting numbers to increase the representational voting population of a given district according to Native Americans and undocumented immigrants living in those districts. Furthermore, provide for incarcerated people to be counted at their last place of residence instead of at their place of incarceration for the purpose of redistricting. This practice is already established by state statute for Senate and Assembly districts. I find this... this one actually surprised me a little bit. It surprised me quite a bit that this wasn't already the case for congressional districts. Revise the procedure for drawing and approving... Just because... I'm going to back it up here a little bit. Because it's weird to me that you would consider someone serving time at Attica as a resident of Attica. That is a strange thing to me. And it appears that currently, under current state law, they are considered a resident of Attica for congressional districts and a resident of their hometown for Senate and Assembly districts. It's weird to me that they would be considered a resident of Attica at all, and it's very weird to me that they are differently considered. Anyway, revise the procedure for drawing and approving congressional and state legislative districts scheduled to be first applied in 2022. The proposed amendment would alter the redistricting procedure in the following ways. Change the redistricting map approval procedures for the Redistricting Commission and Legislature by making changes to the voting thresholds needed to approve or adopt a plan. So this is an alteration to the rules, to the voting threshold needed by a commission to get their plan approved. Approval of a plan by the Redistricting Commission would require at least 7 votes out of 10 commissioners in favor thereof. There would no longer be a requirement for at least one commissioner appointed by each of the legislative leaders to vote in favor of a plan in order to approve it. A plan approved by at least 7 commissioners must be approved by a majority of each house of the legislature to be approved. That seems fairly reasonable to me, actually. I'm not confident what it is now. I'm not confident what the commission rules are now, but this says you need 7 out of 10 commissioners to vote in favor. However, there was the rule earlier changing the commission co-executive director appointment guidelines. So those will be working in conjunction. However, in the event that the Redistricting Commission votes on but does not have the 7 votes needed to approve a plan, the Commission is required to send the legislature the redistricting plan or plans that garnered the most votes. The legislature would be able to adopt such a plan with a 60% majority. This amendment would repeal the requirement that in the event the Speaker of the Assembly and the temporary President of the Senate are members of the same political party. Approval shall require the vote in support of its passage by at least 2/3 of the members elected in each house. I'm glad to see that 2/3 right there. If the Commission fails to vote on any plan or plans by the deadline, all plans, including draft plans in the Commission's possession, are sent to the legislature, and each house of the legislature can introduce and adopt such a plan with or without amendments. The Redistricting Commission voting requirements and legislative vote thresholds for approving the Commission's plan would no longer vary, depending on the political affiliation of the temporary President of the Senate and the Speaker of the Assembly. Okay. The proposed amendment would alter redistricting the following ways. Require the Redistricting Commission that draws the lines to submit its redistricting plan and implementing legislation to the legislature 2 months earlier than called for. Under the current procedure, the timeline set forth in the 2014 state constitutional amendment. That is weird phrasing. For the redistricting cycle due to proceed in 2022, the time frame would be condensed to meet election-related deadlines. Okay. Remove certain restrictions on how Senate district lines are drawn, including the block on border rule that requires placing of blocks on the border of districts in certain districts. Requires placing of blocks on the borders of certain districts in certain districts. Delete certain provisions that the United States Supreme Court has deemed unconstitutional. Okay, this I don't feel too strongly about. What is the block on border rule? Block on border redistricting rule. Huh. I'm not confident what the block on border rule is. Block on border requirement? Democrats. Sure. I had intended this to be a 4-minute video, by the way. Block. The proposed amendment would change. Yeah, I want to know what the block on border requirement is. Block on border. Remove certain restrictions on how Senate district lines are drawn, including the block on border rule. They require placing certain restrictions that require placing of blocks on the border of districts in certain districts. If I'm understanding this correctly, it means that it is removing a rule that requires blocks on the certain specific blocks on the edges of districts to be in specific districts. Huh. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay, and that's it. That's it. So this text here, these are all changes to the way, well, it's this text here, but we won't deal with that. It is this all changes the manner by which New York State elections are held. In particular, the way that New York State districts are redrawn. I will leave a link to this below, and I really, really strongly recommend that you give it another read before you go in to vote. And please, please don't forget to vote tomorrow, November 2nd, if you live in New York or in Virginia or in places with elections this year. United States municipal elections 2021. 4-minute video. Go away. Ballotpedia, I know you're a nonprofit. You know I love you. You know I love you. You know I love you. Oh, goodness gracious. Any of these places. I'll leave a link to this down below, too. All right, and in particular, if you live in New York State, give a read to this. Don't forget to vote. And if anyone doesn't know where their polling location is, or or who's going to be on their ballot, please leave a comment or message the channel, and I will be sure to help you out as best I can. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe to see what we have next. Don't forget to vote. And until next time, be like the New York 2021 ballot propositions. A little contentious and a little complicated, but worthy of consideration. And above all, be interesting. See you next time.